Hello, everybody. Welcome to this video cast brought to you by the Ashang Desai Center for Leadership and Organization Development at IIM Ahmedabad. I am Vishal Gupta, the chairperson of the center, and I am joined by Ms. Annice Joseph, who is the Global Co-Lead of Inclusive Career Journeys and Global Lead of Cross-Generational Intelligence for the SAP Global Diversity and Inclusion Office. She is responsible for fueling innovation and driving strategy with a specific focus on cross-generational diversity, advocating and championing for employees at every stage of their careers at SAP. Annice has been very kind and we are grateful for her giving us this time and joining us for this conversation. We welcome you, Annice, to this video cast, and we look forward to having a conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Professor. It is my honor and privilege to be on a platform and share this with you. Yeah. Looking forward for a very interesting discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Annice. All right, so let us get started with this conversation, and we'll start with the first question, which is, Annice, can you tell us about what do you do more specifically and in more detail at SAP, and what's your current focus area?
Sure, Professor. So in order to explain what I do, maybe I can start with what we as a company do, right? SAP is committed to being one of the most diverse and inclusive companies in the world. So we want to proactively promote diversity and inclusion, both within our workplace and in the marketplaces we serve. We want to ensure that, our workforce is reflecting the diversity of the societies and communities we work in, that our workplaces are welcoming of all these people, and taking and serving the marketplace with a focus to bring everyone along in our journey. Now, my role is to make every effort to ensure that at all stages of employee life cycle, we are inclusive and we are able to enable employee success, hold leaders accountable, and be able to build this diverse ecosystem. For this, my role expects me to have regular consultations with our D&I stakeholders, whether it is D&I champions, D&I leads, our business leaders, our HR, our diverse groups of employee resource groups, and so on. I also have to be able to help people to develop and create a story of D&I in their functions, challenging status quo. This means that I have to get deeper into understanding how we can measure diversity that is visible, and also see how we are able to be inclusive of diversity that is not visible. Further, we work with our partners in terms of our HR collaborators from recruitment, talent engagement, total rewards, and so on, to make our processes and policies inclusive. Make it more welcoming from our candidate pool to employee engagement, retention, and motivation. And really see how the company will adapt to changes, adopt inclusive behaviors, and how we as individuals and as people at the workplace can collaborate and come together as a team. Today, we have more than 4 generations at the workplace. How can we work hand in hand, side by side, and come together to create amazing innovations, right? So therefore, it also means that I'm involved in looking at the future and seeing what we can do from a diversity and inclusion perspective to change the ways of how we work and be prepared for the future of workplace. And that is already here. So that is what I do at SAP in a little bit more detail, Professor.
So thank you, Annice, for sharing in quite a few details about what you do. So can you also elaborate on the kind of diversity that you see happening in these new age organizations? What are some of the salient diversity issues or challenges that organizations of today face?
We, despite about 2 decades of work, we still are working towards seeing gender parity. So diversity of men and women continues to be something that not just SAP as a company, but the industries themselves are working towards. There are some industries which has been able to reach that aha moment and be able to see gender parity. We are also on that journey, positively making good strides. In fact, I was looking at how we have improved over the last decade, and SAP has improved its women in management percentages by at least 1% year on year. So over a past 10 years, we have seen 10% increase. But that is not sufficient. That is not really reflecting the talent that we have on the ground. So I would say, even though it is a little bit of a fatigue topic, gender diversity continues to capture our focus. The second one, which is coming to the surface, is how are we being inclusive of various other diversities? Because in the war for talent, we know that unless we cast our net wider, we will not be able to get true, amazing talent which is out there. And for this, we see that there is talent in different diverse groups, whether it is people from the autism spectrum, whether it is persons with disability, whether we are we truly tapping into the diversity of the queer community, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and other queer identities and orientations. Diversity of culture and ethnic diversity. Today, there is a lot of discussions on Black Lives Matter, and we have seen how unconscious biases against the color of your skin has permeated into societies and into institutions, and how it is becoming a bane. So what can we as a company do to change that narrative, to become more inclusive, to show the basic dignity and respect for human beings across the world of different diversities? So in my mind, Professor, as much as there are some diversities today that we can measure because we can see and make it visible, the intention and the efforts must be to be inclusive of all of these diversities. One very important thing that we are becoming more and more aware of is how the generational diversity is kind of coming to the forefront. I know it sounds as if generations is something which has always existed. Why should it also wear the diversity hat? It is because today your age and your role are not directly proportional. There was that time, right, during Industrial Revolution, that you started off as an apprentice or an intern or a campus hire, and you slowly moved up the ladder. But today it's not like that. You could have anybody run a business, be a multimillionaire, but and have an intern who is 70 years old. So generational diversity will be another thing that is of great importance for us to ensure we are sustainable, we are creating an inclusive workplace, and we are truly driving towards innovations.
Yeah. So very interesting that you talk about visible and invisible kind of diversity. So there is a lot of talk about the visible aspects like multi-generational, multi-gender, and so on. But there are invisible diversities as well, and organizations need to be inclusive. I'm very curious, Annice, to know how did you what drove you to actually take this role up? I see your background has been graduation in science, and then you also have a law degree in human rights, and so tell us about how did you reach where you have reached.
So I am one of those lucky people, Professor, because my passion is my purpose. So I have the job of the work that I love to do, right? So I'm very grateful and very blessed to be in such a place. When I look back in terms of what drove me to take up this role, it's about how I have grown up. During my growing up years, I used to be one of those big, big cheerleaders of unity and diversity. I truly believed in it because I saw it around me. Growing up in India, when it comes to language, culture, food, regions, I mean, we had everything, and I used to like just be thrilled about every festival and thrilled about every celebration we had on diversity. Uh, Having said that, I also had the experience of what it means to feel marginalized, what it means to feel not included and not belong. And we could do something different to make everybody feel included. And that gave me a lot of uh, purpose to challenge where we can't include. Why should we not include someone, right? So this is a little bit in terms of my growing up years. In my professional life, it is interesting that you mentioned my science degree, because when I was in college, I fell in love, and my husband, who I fell in love at that time, was in marketing and sales. And I didn't understand anything that he shared. And because I was so madly in love with him, I promised myself that I will teach to learn what he is doing, to be a true partner, right? And so I did try to do my master's in business management, and I got a good amount of interest in human resources, though I would at some point in my life want to get into sales and marketing, but human resources was something that I really enjoyed because I realized that I love working with people. And I also like to look at what drives people to be engaged. And this kind of got me into a work life of human resources. As I moved in my professional life, I realized that even though the subject of diversity and inclusion might be an afterthought, it is in fact an integral part of employee engagement. And the very core of rights of people, and at workplace and at the larger in the society. Now, this awareness helped me to go deeper. So if you also look at the various things I've done in different companies, I have gone deeper into gender, into persons with disability, into being part of the employee resource group of the CURE community. Because when I look at the LGBTQ community and how they could be discriminated, those times I went to really understand. So as I went on this journey, I realized at the bottom of it all, at the foundation of it all, there is a lack, or there is a miss when it comes to human rights in everything that we do. And that interest got me into getting into, reading about it, and said that, okay, I want to know more. What is human rights? What are the legalities involved? And how can we really use it to surface it up in such a way that people understand that you're not doing a favor to anybody, but it is a basic human right of inclusion that you as a company, as a leader, as a manager are doing when you're including everybody, right? So that was the reason I did my law in human rights. It has been an eye opener. It helps me to have the conversation at a completely different level, right? Because when you talk about it is as much a right as you would like to have in terms of the right to education, right to employment, right to dignity and respect, as much as the other people, then the commonalities and the respect comes through a lot more visibly and strongly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you made very relevant point that it's not just a phrase that looks nice or seems good to be done, but it's actually a part of the law and the rights. So can you give us, Annice, maybe one or two examples of the where diversity should happen, and what organizations do not pay enough attention to when it comes to diversity, and it's a part of their rights. as well. Any example that comes to you top of your mind?
Yeah, I believe that diversity and inclusion, helps companies to have a diverse workforce.
Yeah.
And a diverse workforce increases the effectiveness in organization.
But there's also a counterpoint to this question, which or to this thought, which says, well, diversity could also be a burden. Why should I take uh, a person when I could also hire another person who is of the other kind? And well, it's an added burden to me. I need to take I need to make special provisions, take special care, etc., etc. So how do you
Yeah.
respond to that comment?
No, you're right. So diversity by itself is going to exist. In nature, there is diversity.
Yes.
If you're not inclusive about them, you're going to push them to a corner. You're going to put them into cubicles, and you're going to separate them out, and they are not going to engage with you. So you might think that you want a homogeneous group, but there is diversity in all of us. And if you only have clones in your company or in your workplace, which is going to work exactly like you, think exactly like you, then what is the value that you're having in terms of, if you have the same person who's doing exactly the same thing, thinking exactly the same way, then in my mind, would it not be redundant to have two of the same kind, right? Because today we live in a world where things are changing really fast. We want to be able to be open to ensure that we understand the diversity of the customer, diversity of the markets we go to. We want to ensure that we are able to think differently and beat our competition. And for all of this, you will need diversity. Yes, it is hard, because unless you make an effort for inclusion, you can get into a very bad state of creating a Noah's Ark, creating two of every kind into your room, and nobody is talking to each other, right? So therefore, diversity and inclusion, though it is not to be used interchangeably, but it is to be used in a complementary fashion, right? So diversity, bringing diversity into the workplace has shown, studies have proven that it lifts employee morale. And it lifts employee morale in such a way that the engagement of employees becomes better if you are creating that inclusive environment for diverse people, right? When you see that your company cares about maternity and paternity leave, people are offering benefits during a certain period of your life stage. It is not just those people, those individuals who are taking the benefit, but everybody who's seeing this says that, oh, if I have such a need, my company will take care, right? So employee engagement becomes extremely crucial, and creating a diverse workforce helps to have better, it lifts employee morale, improves employee engagement. Now, you might think, so what, right? A couple of years ago, I would say at least 5-6 years ago, SAP and PwC came together and really looked at quantifying the power of employee engagement. And we found that just 1% increase in employee engagement can impact our bottom line by over 50 million euros annually. Now, which company will not want such a benefit, right? And it helps you to have great access to new segments in the marketplace. Because very often when we don't think about diverse segments, it's because we are not exposed to that kind of regions or that kind of places, right? And and when you have someone from a diverse background, it could be, just as an example, you might be a company which is very focused in ensuring that you cater to the Indian market. And you might have someone come from Philippines or Indonesia, and you realize that as much as they are different from you, the commonalities helps you to tap into a completely different segment of the marketplace. And having those links in terms of culture, language, gender, generation helps you to really go and capture the market in ways that you wouldn't have ever imagined before. In fact, today's companies are even segregating their marketplace in terms of diversity. The third thing I will probably quickly add is it enhances productivity. I know it seems a little doubtful. How can it enhance productivity? I'll give you a quick story on this. When we had hired some time ago, not in SAP, but in another company at Wipro, we hired people with speech and hearing impairment. Now, what does this mean? This means that every training has to be converted into a written form because these students who had been hired could not hear you speak and they could not talk to you back. So when the instructor started to do training in a written format, showing pictures, encouraging chats, what they resulted in was creating a training document that was so thorough and so perfect that every instructor could use it, and it saved them a lot of time and effort improving their productivity. So being diverse helps you to think differently in the initial stages. Yes, it might look harder, but as you go, you will find that the results are amazing and you're able to have productivity, improved employee morale, and also be able to reach to new segments of the market.
Yeah.
I know, long answer.
No, very informative. So tell us the specific interventions at SAP, any specific interventions that you like to, or you have led, which you would like to share with the audience.
Sure. At SAP, I did focus on cross-generational intelligence. And one of the things that we tried to find out was, is it really necessary to talk about different generations, try to have a KPI to improve a certain generational percentage and so on. And while we did that, we realized it is not about the individual generational type. You know, it is not about talking how great millennials are or how fantastic Gen X leadership is and so on, but really looking at creating environments that will help cross-generational collaboration. How can one do cross-generational collaboration? Is it not something which is natural? While we looked at it, we realized the reality of the day is that ageism does exist. How you look at a person younger than you or how you look at a person older than you can come in the way of how you're collaborating with them. This led us to think about how can we help people become aware of these differences and overcome the bias around generations. So we not only had workshops which talked about busting generational myths, where we encourage people to come together and discuss various aspects of generations, various aspects of just asking each other, why do you do this? Why do you not do that? And so on. And also, it was not something which only HR or D&I drove. It was something which started with people and spread and grew along with people. So it was teams which came together and said that I really like this effort. I want to go and talk to more people and so on and so forth. So much so that, you know, we were able to reach almost 2,000 to 3,000 people in just India, in the SAP in India, in terms of understanding about generation. So now that you have understood, you know, there are commonalities, there are differences, being respectful is a key, asking will help you to overcome biases. What do you do next? So then we started something called cross-generational mentoring, where we have encouraged people to not only listen from people who are senior to you by age, but to also listen to people who are senior to you by experience. So you might have, you know, 10 years of experience in a corporate world, but here comes a guy who has 10 years of experience on driving a YouTube channel, right? So to be respectful of that and learn from that. And we realized that cross-generational collaboration can take you to different levels, including finding solution for your customers. And that has been a great way for us to understand the power of inclusion at the workplace. Now, what I'm doing is really looking at what kind of labor gap exists because of generational difference in other parts of the world. In Europe, for example, we are looking at how is the aging population coping with workplace changes? Are we ensuring that they're continuing to feel included and dignified as they prepare for retirement? We're also looking at, even after they retire, how are veterans wanting to engage with the workplace? While we do all this, we want to ensure that there is collaboration. So this is something that we are continuing to focus on this year and the next probably at SAP.
Very nice. Very good initiative, I think, about generations. Do you have any specific ways, Annice, to measure the inclusion aspect, given that there's this diversity? How do you track this over time, or measure that there is a positive change happening based on the interventions that you do?
Absolutely. I believe, as SAP also being a technology company, and a lot of our dashboards are about measurements, from a diversity perspective also, we are very mindful of what we measure. So in terms of the diversity of our people, we definitely look at the gender diversity. We see how we have been able to improve the representation across different levels, different business units, and different regions. As you will know, SAP has an external commitment of reaching a certain percentage of women in management. And we also continue to measure in terms of our ethnicity. We again have an external commitment in terms of focusing and doubling down on the representation of Black African Americans and other underrepresented ethnicities in the company. We continue to do that. We do that by measuring it at a very global level through only self-identification. So we ensure that the process also is respectful of privacy of the people and dignified around sensitive information. In addition to all of this, if you remember, we talked about invisible diversities. We also look at what is a kind of generational setup that we have in the company, whether it is from a particular region or from globally as well. And the reason why we want to take a look at it is we want to ensure that SAP also is able to reflect the working society in the globe, and we are not missing out on any talent. In addition, there are aspects around persons with disability, people from the autism spectrum, and so on, where we look at the diversity. Now, for the inclusion part, and we are working towards a little bit more of self-identification that is in the works, and we hope we can be able to get and understand the diversity of a company in a little bit more deeper manner. With regard to the inclusion part, we measure our inclusion every year along with our people survey. We call it the #unfiltered, and what we have is 3 specific questions around how people are feeling the equal opportunity and whether they are feeling the inclusion and belonging in the company. And I'm very happy to say that over the years, we have seen improvement happening across the company with regard to our D&I index. But at the same time, we're also seeing that the experience of equal opportunity between men and women across generations, across different age groups, and across different regions are also improving. So yes, this is something that we do very regularly, and at least twice a year we continue to do. And then, of course, with regard to other qualitative inputs in terms of how people are adapting to workshops, how people are engaging with employee network groups, all of that continues to be something that we look at.
Yeah, so some kind of, like you mentioned about the behaviors, for example, will a young person talk to an elderly, or in terms of experience also, an inexperienced person and an experienced person, are they collaborating or are they talking to each other? So you would, I believe, what you mentioned, the qualitative inputs towards the end of that answer, that is where this kind of input is taken, as in how are people interacting with other communities and at office.
Yeah, in fact, at the end of every workshop that we have questions around what they liked and what they wish for.
Okay.
And when we look at it in a very analytical manner, Professor, we found that people are assuming many things. And when they have these conversations, they are opening up and realizing that they can do a lot better.
Yeah.
When they finish the workshops and they go back, their behavior towards their colleagues change to the extent that they say that, okay, now I need to be more mindful in terms of what I'm asking for, why I'm asking, and how I'm asking. And just this whole conversation of, listening and asking helps them to become better. We have many testimonials from our people who have said that becoming aware of a certain diversity, especially generational diversity, helps us to be mindful in terms of what we are taking for granted, what we are assuming, and what we should be asking. One simple example that I can quote for you is that we have a program called Early Talent, which basically attracts campus hires and people with less than 2 years experience into SAP. And they have a very special focus in terms of their training, their integration, their exposure, and so on. And so there is a lot of expectations from them. And during one of these workshops, one manager said that we expect so much from our early talent, but they don't seem to speak up. Why are they so shy? We are giving them so much of opportunity. And then the person who was in the workshop, who came from campus, said, "Sir, till we joined SAP, we used to call you sir and madam. The day we are joining SAP, you're asking us to call you by first name." It is a whole lot of things for us to change, because we have grown up in a society and a culture to respect others, to call people by address them with a sir, and stand up when they pass by, because that is how we have been taught to respect elders. So by the time we take the courage to call you by first name, you have moved on. Give us the time for us to adapt to this new situation. Just having those conversations helps them to be mindful in terms of what you're expecting from the other generation. And vice versa, right? Like, there are a lot of assumptions that you think, because the way in which we are brought up about older people is so different, right? And so now people are asking, like, can we do hackathons together, irrespective of what generations you are, right? So there is a lot more collaboration, camaraderie, and inclusion at the workplace because of that.
And so coming to listening to you, Annice, tell us, what would be your advice to young students who are in management colleges, or actually other colleges as well, as they are preparing for their professions? What would be your advice about diversity and inclusion to them?
I would say that diversity exists. So therefore, have an open mindset to be inclusive of diversity, right? There are many things that we know. There are many things that we know that we don't know, but there are many unknowns. And so be open to the fact that when people are different from you, when you're discussing something and it is not the norm, or when you know that it is, when you feel that I don't get it, it might not be because the other person is doing a mistake or at a fault or something less, but just a different way of thinking. So have the growth mindset to be able to unlearn, learn, and relearn. I know diversity and inclusion is a vast subject, And if I can say, what can you keep in mind with regards to having this inclusive mindset, I would say that have the openness to improve your awareness around diversity. Read a lot more. I mean, today the world is, the technology and the internet is so advanced that you need not necessarily read with a hardbound book, right? You can harvest knowledge through various sources, whether it's YouTube, whether it's podcast, whether it is white papers that is being published, whether it is talking to others. So have the open mindset to become more aware. Understand one different diversity aspect of your colleagues, friends, of your interviewers, wherever you go. Have that openness. Ensure that your behaviors are always respectful, even though you might feel somebody is not so respectful, right? And the reason I say is very often people act and their behaviors and actions might look as if they are being rude, or they are disrespectful, or they are hangry, or they are hating on you, and so on. However, having a mindset of being, of your behaviors being inclusive and being respectful will help you to understand things from the other person's perspective. This will not only make you look more professional, more advanced, and more mature, but it will truly help you to be respectful and dignified of everyone you meet. And that automatically will help you to be more inclusive in the workplace that you go to. The third one I would say is, while you do this change in behavior, think about how you can connect with other people and challenge assumptions that you have grown up with. Question the status quo, have a curious mindset. Now, in any of this, I have not mentioned the actual diversity tips. And the reason is, it is for us to find it in our own journey. So awareness, behaviors, and curiosity will be something that will help you to have that inclusive mindset as you move from campus to corporate. Because while you are doing that, it is a long stint that you're getting into, right? Yeah. So that would be my recommendation for people moving from campus to corporate.
Yeah, excellent. I think the ABC, awareness, behaviors, and challenging mindset leads to better D, E, and I. So
nice.
So I think that's the ABCDEI. I think that's the framework. Thank you, Annice, for sharing that. And my last question for today is, what would be your advice for the professionals as they are working and preparing themselves for leadership roles in organizations? As a person who has had vast experience looking at organizations, the idea of diversity, inclusion, and also leadership from close quarters, what's your advice to professionals?
To begin with, the way I look at leadership itself is it's changing, right? I'm unable to recall who said this, but leadership is no longer a title. It is a talent that you can learn and develop. And leadership comes not when somebody, and what does it mean? It means that leadership comes not because you are sitting in a position of command and control, but really when other people recognize you as a leader, when you are able to coach and collaborate and other people look up to you as a leader, that is when that is the true leadership. That is great leadership, right? So for this, what do you need? I think it's extremely important for us to keep in mind that while we think about leadership roles, to really go deeper and become a true expert in whatever role that you're doing, right? Like don't lose focus on the core of your strengths, core of your skill set. Go as deep as possible, be the go-to person for everything in it, but at the same time, have the openness and the flexibility to learn from others. As I said, in this world today, we have to unlearn and relearn many things. So have that flexibility in mind. The second thing I believe most maybe it is the first thing, in fact, is to be aware. To be here mindfully in everything that you do goes a long way, right? It seems so simple, like, aren't we doing that? But being aware of yourself and being aware of people around you so that as you go forward, you take people along with you will be second. The third thing that I would say that in order to see great leadership, taking ownership of everything that you do, taking up that accountability and responsibility. But I would say, much more would be the ownership in terms of how you're going to take something forward and be able to share that with others in a way that they are able to equally participate, add value, and therefore you become inclusive. So these would be, in my mind, top 3 things that I would look for in a leader while, they're aiming to get people along and really become a global leader. These would be some of the things that I have in mind.
Yeah, and I think what you say connects beautifully with the whole idea of diversity and inclusion. We've got to be aware of the diversity, be flexible enough to adapt, and then take ownership to actually include that into our behaviors and in organizations that we lead, the teams that we lead in, and so on.
I love that, Professor. You connected it beautifully. Couldn't have said it better. Thank you.
Thank you. And so that brings me to the end of the questions that I wanted to ask you about this topic and about the work that you, but I have, before we end, I have a rapid fire. I would ask you some questions and I want you to answer spontaneously what comes to your mind. So that's the quick buzzer round or the rapid fire round. That so are you ready? There would be 6 questions and I want your honest response to those.
Okay.
Yeah. So here we go. The first question, your hero / heroine.
My hero has been my dad for the way he brought me up. As a teenager, he sent me to a place where transgender people lived, and I was the only girl in their entire group to go there. It made a lot of impact on me. So, and he was a wonderful human being, respectful, inclusive, believed in harmony. So my dad. Heroine, many women who have done great roles. I must quickly add that I was very inspired by the character of Gangubai because of the way in which she brought dignity to a profession where we, in many of parts of our society, it's even taboo to talk about prostitution or sex work. And in such an era, she really brought in something amazing to bring dignity to the community. So very inspired. I can go on, but I will stop here.
Yes. So your passion. Second question. Your passion.
My passion is, I'm a person who always wants to explore the unknown. So I have a very curious mindset. So my passion is about knowing more, reaching out, understanding more, go deeper, and research more, and so on. And this passion to understand has helped me to drive with purpose in terms of how can we create a world that is more inclusive and more respectful.
Yeah. Two most important values for you.
I think I kind of told it in my previous answer, but respect and inclusion. Okay. And the reason I would say this is because stemmed on this, various things arise, right? Like my support for right against wrong always, bringing a balance into my life, unwavering integrity and honesty, all that comes from my values of respect and inclusion.
Okay, your concept of an ideal leader.
Wow. I find that leadership, when I think about people who truly stand out, is in the way their actions and behaviors come up. And for me, I wouldn't call it a sacrifice, but my great leaders are people who do something so fantastic and still are humble enough not to take and make a big show of it themselves, but give the credits to their people around them. I think my mom, for example, she has unwavering focus in terms of how both of us, my brother and I, should work, move forward, and really make it in life. And she never talks about her effort, right? Whether it is getting us all the stuff we need, helping us burn the midnight oil, doing that extra bit to ensure that we are given that extra tuitions, whatever. She never is proud of, oh, I did this and that's why my children are. She is so amazingly brilliant and at the same time very humble. So for me, that's an example of great leadership, an ideal leader.
Okay. Your concept of an ideal organization.
My concept of an ideal organization is an organization which can truly foster inclusive environment for diversity. I love the environment I'm in today because at SAP, I feel I can bring everything I am and become whatever I want to be. Having an environment that gives me that opportunity and also allows me to, give me that freedom to work, but at the same time, have great mentors and a great environment to really reach your potential is totally amazing. And it's the recency bias that I'm just talking about SAP, but there are companies which are like that. For example, I did my human rights law in SAP while I was working. And that could have happened only because my manager said, yes, Annice, go for it. What do you need? I'll support you. Similarly, today, I have personal ambition to go and live in another country. And that is being, it's being supported fully by my manager. And I'm getting this opportunity to go live in another country, work with SAP. So I would think an ideal organization is where it truly fosters diversity and, it fosters an inclusive environment and embraces diversity.
Yeah. And last question, your ideal world, concept of an ideal world. So we are moving in levels, leader, organization, and now world.
That sounds like, the typical beauty contest question. So yeah, I would also believe in world peace and harmony. But when I really look at it, especially the times that we are going through, it is the need of the hour where we want to see harmony and goodwill and respect for all people, which is diverse already, right? And
that cannot happen without inclusive.
Yeah, and exactly. And we are all longing for it. And it is so relevant, especially when I see the wars, when I see the societal tensions, when I see the cultural differences, which is breaking us apart. I realize that today we need to, as a species, as human beings, really overcome and uplift ourselves from the very old unconscious biases and beliefs and really work towards us coming together as a more aware and respectful, dignified society. So that would be my ideal world.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful answers and very straight from the heart answers, Annice. It has been amazing talking and learning from you. My personal takeaways would be being more conscious of the invisible diversity. While we think there are diversity in terms of visible, but there are efforts that need to be made about the same. The ABC framework was absolutely brilliant, being more aware, minding your behaviors, and then challenging preconceived notions, which could lead to the better DEI. And again, being aware, flexible, and taking ownership for leaders about not just diversity and inclusion, but almost every other thing that they do in the organization. I think it makes a lot of sense. And once again, on behalf of the center, we thank you very much for taking out this time and sharing very open, honest ideas about the world, about the work that you do, and also some of the future things that organizations must keep in mind. Thank you very much, Annice.
Thank you, Professor. It has been an honor, and I hope I added value to what you were thinking. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Annice.